Do not talk to them!
They broke down his door, guns out, dragged a U.S. citizen outside in his underwear in Minnesota freezing winter, and then just left. No apology, no warrant, of course not, and not even my bad. How's it going, everybody? My name's Michael Saint Gregory. This is Raw America, where we cover news that makes you stare at your screen and pretty much go, are we okay as a country? Like, literally, are we okay? Today's verdict up front: ICE is operating like an unaccountable armed gang, which we already knew about, and they're terrorizing communities now so broadly, they're actually snatching U.S. citizens out of their homes. The one thing we feared to start happening has begun. And the most disgusting part, they're still trying to justify it. And please, stay to the end, because I've got a question for you that I really need answered in the comments. What would happen if your local police did this to you or your neighbor? Minnesota, St. Paul, Sunday afternoon. Apologies in advance. I have practiced these names several times over. I am going to try my best to make sure that they are pronounced as correctly as possible. A Hmong family is at home. Grandpa Chongli Scott Tao is taking a nap. Then, according to Tao and his family, plus video reviewed by the AP, ICE agents are banging on the door. Tao tells them not to open it. So what do the agents do? Naturally, they force entry. Guns drawn. Masked, of course, because why would they want to show their face in such a proud moment? Yelling. And because that's always going to make the situation calm. And then, of course, it gets even more dystopian. They leave this man outside in sub-freezing weather, wearing basically underwear and sandals. The AP says underwear and sandals with a blanket, which we do see. And Reuters describes them as shorts, boxers, and Crocs. None of it spells dignified. And his 4-year-old grandson is watching and crying, witnesses the whole thing. Neighbors are yelling. People are blowing whistles and horns. It is absolute chaos. And here's the whole thing. This isn't a whoopsie. This is an armed federal agency doing a street humiliation tactic to a man in his own neighborhood. And then Tao says they drive him around for an hour or 2+ hours, take him to the middle of nowhere, these were his words, photograph him in the cold, and eventually bring him back. No words said, no apologies, not even a mistaken identity, because of course not.
They asked me, do I have my ID? I go, yeah, it's in the room. And then my daughter-in-law, she tried to get my ID, but they didn't want to see it no more. Yeah, they just took me out there with no clothes on, and then just covered with my grandson's blanket. So yeah, they just took me out there. And I was like, man, this is embarrassing.
Now, the DHS's response is where the gaslighting begins, which apparently they have become even more experts in than bringing terror to the streets of the citizens of the United States. The DHS says that it was a targeted operation looking for 2 convicted sex offenders at that address. They claim that Tao matched the description and that he refused to be fingerprinted or facially ID'd, so they detained him. And the family, they say DHS is pushing false and misleading claims, and they categorically dispute the idea that those targets lived with him.
If this America is what it looks like, why were we here? What are we doing here?
AP reports Tao says only his immediate family lives there, and they saw nobody in that home shows up in the Minnesota sex offender registry. So they didn't even have a categorical reason when you can easily look this up in a public database. The AP also reports that the DHS didn't provide AP the identities of the 2 alleged targets or explain why they believed they were there. So they could just be lying and making it up. At least that's what I'm observing from this. So notice the move. They didn't apologize. They don't say, we got the wrong house. They say, actually, this man in his underwear, maybe he kind of looked like our guy that we're not going to name or disclose any sort of information of that might help in this situation. It's January in Minnesota, not exactly the vacation capital of the world. Everybody looks like some guy when you kick in the door, and the only wardrobe option is to panic. Reuters said that they reported it was 14 degrees Fahrenheit in St. Paul that day. 14 degrees. If it's 14 degrees and you're walking around like someone outside half-dressed like it's a perp walk, that is doing that for your ego. That's what you're doing that for. That's what you're taking someone outside for a public display. You're doing it to show that you can and that you will. And Reuters also reports Tao is a naturalized U.S. citizen, came to the U.S. as a child and became a citizen in 1991. This is not some sort of paperwork mix-up. This is raw government force pointed at whoever is closest. So let me ask you something. If an agency can do this to a U.S. citizen on camera, what do you think they're doing to people who have a megaphone? Tao says he's planning a civil rights lawsuit in that he doesn't feel safe sleeping in his home anymore. And that is the point. When the state acts like this, it's not public safety. It's public intimidation. Now zoom out. This didn't happen in a vacuum. Reuters reports thousands of officers have been deployed in Minneapolis, in that area, as part of Trump's immigration crackdown. And tensions are already high enough as it is because this is happening amid protests and legal fights over the agents' tactics. In fact, Reuters reports a federal judge in Minnesota issued an injunction limiting aggressive tactics that could chill constitutionally protected protests. And the Trump administration is appealing that injunction because, of course, they want to make sure nothing gets in their way of avoiding all laws because, of course, they're just going to do what they want. And yes, this is the same broader Minnesota situation that includes the fatal shooting of Renee Good. So when people say, why are communities freaking out? Well, first of all, I asked, why wouldn't they be freaking out? But also because the federal government is showing up armed, masked, and unaccountable. And the consequences have literally already been deadly. You know how cops always say, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear? Yeah, well, tell that to the grandpa in Crocs getting abducted for the crime of existing near a door. The Fourth Amendment protects everyone in the country from unreasonable searches and seizures. And as the AP points out, most immigration arrests are done with administrative warrants, not judicial warrants. So let me translate that for you. An administrative warrant generally does not authorize forcibly entering private property to detain someone, meaning you can legally refuse entry if that's all they have. So when you hear no warrant, it's not a technicality. It's the whole country. It's the difference between law and a gang with badges. And if DHS believes it can barge into homes, detain people, and humiliate them outside in freezing weather, that's not mistakes happen. That is a system built to treat rights like optional add-ons. Here's our question for you in the comments. If ICE can do this to a U.S. citizen, a legal, naturalized, born in the States citizen, what's the safeguard for anyone else? Also, who's paying for the damages, not just physically to the house, but traumatically for the children, the kids' nightmares that this family is going to be having and sharing for the rest of their lives? This is our standard law and order brand nowadays. Break stuff, scare families, shrug, repeat. So here's what I want you to do. First of all, for the channel's sake, so we can get more stories like that out there into the public awareness. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and share with this person in your life who still thinks that it's only criminals who get treated like this. So drop your comment. What should happen to an agency that raids the wrong home and refuses to even have the decency to apologize in the slightest degree? I'm Michael St. Gregory for Raw America. Stay loud, stay safe, stay vigilant.